We are just days away from BYU football taking the field in their season opener against Sam Houston, and NIL is still a topic of interest for BYU fans. The Royal Blue is picking up steam and announcing something really, really cool for the BYU football program heading into the season. We're also going to get to know BYU defensive tackle David Latu.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. A little bit of a special edition for you guys today. We are loaded up with content this week, so hope you guys enjoyed the conversation with Jason Barfield from Sam Houston State as he joined us to give us a preview of what to expect from the Bearcats. But want to get this out to you guys because I just have been looking at how much stuff I have to really cover on the podcast and said, you know what? Let's just sit down and knock out another edition of the podcast, a special edition, and talk a little bit about what's going on with regards to BYU football. Now, I'm pulling this up right now. The Royal Blue is BYU's official authorized collective, and they've been doing a lot of good things since they announced this initiative not all that long ago, but they have announced something very, very cool in the lead up to the start of the BYU football season. Now, I know that name, image, and likeness and payments to players and the whole circumstances around it may be a little bit suspect to you, and you think either you think it's enhancing college football, you think it's ruining college football. Your opinions may vary on that, but the simple fact of the matter is it's the reality of what's happening in college sports today. Players are getting paid for their name, image, and likeness, and they are cashing in at an unprecedented rate. And the Royal Blue Collective announced something this week that I think is absolutely awesome, and it falls right in line with how BYU wants to operate in the NIL sphere, as well as make sure that their athletes are taken care of it, just in terms of the recruiting process here. So I'm going to read it directly from the press release I got from the Royal Blue Collective. Big ups to Mark Comer and the gang over there with TRB. But they announced this. The Royal Blue Collective, the official NIL collective of BYU Athletics, is proud to announce the launch of an unprecedented mentorship program that promises to set new standards for athlete support in college sports. In alignment with the leadership of Coach Kalani Sitake and in the generous backing of founding donors, if I can read this correctly, the Royal Blue has introduced a comprehensive initiative that financially and academically supports each member of the BYU football program. I'm just reading this off my phone here. Now, what does this mean for BYU football? Well, what it means is they have a number of high-level donors from various companies. We're talking CEOs, COOs, presidents, boards of trustees type people who have got the financial backing to benefit the BYU football program are stepping up to the plate. Every single member of the BYU football program, all 123 players, guys from, let's say, Keaton Slovis is QB1, who's like the toast of the town, because when you're the quarterback at BYU, especially the starting quarterback, you are like BMOC, big man on campus. But all the way down to the very tail end of the scout team, guys. We're talking the walk-ons, the guys who are going to be lucky at any point in their career to see time on the football field, sad as that is to say. Every single member of the BYU football program is going to benefit financially from this arrangement. The more important part in my mind is, yes, paying all the players, making sure they get a significant amount of money, and significant can be relative for certain guys, I'm sure. But the bigger point is all players are going to benefit from this. Will the bigger name players, obviously by virtue of the fact that they have other NIL deals, benefit more financially? Absolutely they will. Guys like Cody Epps, Kingsley Suamataia, you can't seemingly drive down I-15 without seeing them featured in some kind of ad. We just saw Lauren Gustin and Cody Epps do a really cool commercial for NetSuite and Squire CPA firm. So a lot of good things happening in the NIL sphere, but they want to make sure, speaking of the Royal Blue Collective, to do what Kalani Sitake's vision is for his program. And Kalani's vision is every single member of the BYU football program benefits from NIL. And that's exactly what they have done here. But to my bigger point, the mentorship side of this is absolutely underrated in all of this. We're talking companies like, excuse me, PAX. I've got that mountain, that wildfire air is getting into my lungs. I apologize for that. But PAX is on with this. Mountain America Credit Union, NutriCost, Feastbox, Legally Mine, New Skin, let's see, Quick Quack Car Wash, Zion's Bank. among the initial sponsors slash mentors slash financial backers of this initiative with the Royal Blue. And they said they're going to still continue to expand this. The thing about this is I understand it, is that they have made a financial commitment, obviously, to BYU football and the entire all 123 members of the BYU football program. But those same people, we're talking the people leading these big companies, are going to be mentors for these BYU football players. That part of this, I know that doesn't necessarily have direct financial impact on these student athletes, but that is completely underrated in this circumstance, because we all know this. If you're a BYU fan who has paid attention to anything that BYU talks about, they talk about the world being our campus. The BYU network is absolutely unlike anything else. There are very few like it. Stanford probably factors in there just with their connections worldwide, but BYU, simply due to the fact that they're associated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, obviously sponsored by the LDS Church, but more importantly, having alumni, and we're talking really, really influential type alumni all over the country, is going to give these athletes, these BYU football players in particular, but I would imagine that there's other BYU athletes who will benefit from this down the road as well, where they can get in, meet with these people, build up a network with these companies, these founders of these companies, these COOs. And if for whatever reason they don't go pro in whatever sport, in this case football, and that doesn't necessarily work out in the NFL, having this type of a network to fall back on for your professional life, it's completely, it's not completely underrated, but it is highly undervalued. I feel like this is absolutely going to be a really impactful thing, and BYU can use it to their credit. Now they can really go out. Now this was let me backtrack just a little bit. This was part of the vision that the Built Bar deal originally had. You remember all BYU players, walk-ons, got checks to cover their tuition, as well as all current scholarship players at BYU got a check for being involved in the NIL sphere with Built Bar. This is essentially that put on like steroids times 1,000, it feels like. It's just opening up a new thing for BYU football. But more importantly, they can now go recruit with all 123 of their guys on the roster to any walk-on, any scholarship player, and say, we have at least this NIL setup, this mentorship deal with the Royal Blue Collective, which will guarantee you at least some money every single month. That is highly underrated, especially during the summer months when a lot of these athletes are kind of left to fend for themselves with regards to their scholarships haven't kicked in. They're not being fed every day by the training table at the university. So this is a really, really cool initiative, and I got to give a tip of the cap to the Royal Blue Collective. They continue to try and innovate. They've joined a national organization with the hopes that they can standardize how NIL is operating from the collective side of things. It's really, really smart on their part, speaking of the Royal Blue, to have this foresight to kind of look out and try and gather what's going on the horizon. I know that Encore is involved with this, Russ White and Brian Fagan, all the guys over there with Encore are also in the mix with this. So this is, I think, a highly under talked about, and it's not under talked about. I'm talking about it, but it should be talked about more fully, how impactful it feels like this could be for BYU football. And I think it's going to be awesome. But the more important part to me, that mentorship side of things, it is severely underrated, because having that network, tapping into the BYU network as a student athlete, no matter if your pro career works out or not, having that backing, that network to rely upon whenever the games end for you, man, it's really, really nice to have. There's no doubt about that. All right, coming up here in just a minute, round out this special edition of the podcast. I had a great chance earlier this week to talk with new BYU defensive tackle David Latu, obviously a part of a trio of guys who transferred from Snow College and committed to BYU to come up from Snow to play for BYU. David is the only one currently enrolled. He is already on the depth chart for BYU, even after not getting cleared until a couple of weeks into training camp. But he is figuring to have a role for BYU as soon as this week against Sam Houston State. Had a great chat with him. We'll get to that conversation coming up in just a moment. First, a word on our friends over at LinkedIn. Of course, we've been working with LinkedIn forever now. They are our official recruiting sponsor right here on the Locked On College channel. But these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team. The best part is that they do it for faster and for free. Not for faster, faster and for free. Excuse me on that. But the best part is you can go on and set up your job profile whatever you're looking for, whatever position you're looking for. Then add that job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to help people know that you're hiring, and you can get started right away. They feature simple tools like screening questions, making it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And more importantly, it's why small businesses are rating LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. Thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the podcast. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we get you ready for Sam Houston State. My thoughts on the Bearcats, where I think the edge might lie for BYU in the season opener out at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and also an exclusive one-on-one conversation with freshman running back LJ Martin, a guy who has made a big impact as a true freshman in just a few weeks' time in training camp. Now rating third on the depth chart. How quickly can he rise to the top? Well, you'll hear from him on tomorrow's edition, a full edition of Locked On Cougars. Excuse me, man. Apologies. Got something caught in my throat with regards to that. All that wildfire smoke caught up with me in just 24 hours. But nonetheless, let's talk now with David Latu. Now, this is a guy, speaking of Latu, who was an All-American in his lone season at Snow College. Formerly of Bingham High School, served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, came back, played that 1 year, was absolutely dominant on the JUCO level. And the hope is for BYU, as the season progresses, he will continue to rise up the depth chart. He's currently running amongst the backups at defensive tackle for BYU, but his overall body of work coming from the JUCO ranks makes you think, okay, this dude's got something for BYU and can lend a little bit. He's got a really unique backstory as well. So without further ado, here you go, my conversation with David Latu. You were late getting into fall camp here, obviously making sure everything was all clear, but how does it feel that you're finally now in Provo playing for BYU?
Blessing. Amazing. I'm thankful to be here for the patience that everyone had to wait for me to come in. The coaches, the staffs were awesome. So when I get in, I was ready to go. So.
Now, how was the junior college experience? You had to go that route, but how did that all go in your mind?
I kind of planned it out on my junior college experience. I only did 1 year at Snow College, so I kind of wanted to, step my level up to go to D1 and play at a higher level. So
it worked out the way you had planned, obviously.
Yeah, it worked out.
Now, obviously, you're playing defensive line here at BYU. What's it been like working with a guy like Sione Pua?
Man, Coach Puha, I always wanted to be under him. He was a great coach. I actually knew him since he was Utah Youth, so being here with him is awesome. I always want to be under him.
Now, you obviously are playing defensive tackle. How do you feel this defense fits your skill set?
Man, in so many ways. It helps me become a better mobile D-line, left and right, so it's helping me so much to get better as I go.
Now, I've had conversations with Caden and Nisa, who are guys who have been here for quite a while, and they've talked about the differences in this defense versus the previous one, where they feel like it's more, you can make more plays as a defensive lineman. Would you agree with that assessment?
I agree with them as well. It's just crazy because it's kind of like this defense makes you just do what you want to do, right? Or make plays. So it's been like that the whole time I've been here. So
you talked about knowing Coach Pua. Does he ever talk about like his days at Utah, his NFL experience with you guys, and like, hey, I've been there, done this?
Yeah, he talks about his NFL experience. He doesn't talk about his other college experience. So it's great though. It's been awesome.
Now, what's it been like working with Coach Hill?
Coach Hill, amazing coach, super intense, wants you to do your best every time, every play, every rep, and great defensive coordinator. I would rather be under him than anybody else. Great.
I've heard that term from him, intense. Like, how so? Is it just his personality? What is it about him?
I mean, intense, kind, like, it's like intensely kind.
Okay.
Or he pushes you to, where he knows that how great you could be.
Got it.
So he does that, and he's very good at it.
Fair enough. Now, obviously, first game this weekend. How excited are you to be playing your first Division I game, and obviously BYU being a member of the Big 12 Conference?
Oh man, first of all, just gonna thank the Lord, but I'm just truly grateful, thankful to be here to play my first D1 game. I always wanted to, as I'm like the first one in my family to be in here, so it's representing. So.
How much family are you going to have in the stands?
I don't know now. We'll see.
I know that your family situation, your father passed away, is that correct?
Correct.
Like, how much does that inspire you to keep doing what you're doing?
Inspires me greatly. My dad took me a long time to get to know him. But once I did, became super close. He pushed me to do my higher level. So.
Now, I want to get your thoughts on Sam Houston. What have you seen from film on them?
Sam Houston looks like a great opportunity, great opponent. They're a great team, so we're ready to come and play a great team.
Did you attend many BYU games growing up?
I have not, actually.
Okay.
No.
So you've never really experienced the crowd?
No, never experienced BYU before.
What have your teammates told you about it?
Teammates are like, man, it's crazy. It's going to be exciting. Just get ready because it's going to be loud. 63,000, so I never experienced that before. So
that's awesome. Last thing for me is obviously you now stepping up to this level. What do you think will set you apart as a player at this level?
I just think I'm ready. I've been hungry since I came back. Since JUCO,
yeah.
I've been hungry. I want it as much as many of these players. I think it's just the push and the drive I have to keep going.
There you go, David Latu, BYU defensive tackle, and you heard him talk about the fact that he's playing for family, and he's obviously excited to be a part of the BYU football program. This is a guy who's played high-level football. When he played at Brigham, they had some really, really good players. They had guys up at Utah like Junior Tafuna playing alongside him, Samote Pepa, who made some interesting comments recently that he grew up a BYU guy, but decided he was sick of watching BYU lose all the time to Utah and decided to go play for the Utes, only to have Utah lose that game in 2021. But nonetheless, big ups to David Latu for taking the time, and you heard him talking about this kind of the plan for him to come to BYU and live the dream, play the 1 year at Snow, and obviously live his dream at the Division I level. I'm just going to make a bold prediction right now. By the end of this season, David Latu is going to be a starting defensive tackle for BYU, and I expect him to hold down that position for the foreseeable future for the Cougars. I think he's got that type of potential. He's got the body, the frame, the overall athleticism you need to have an impact on the defensive line. I don't have anything against guys like Jackson Cravens, Atunai Samahe, Caden Haas, John Nelson. But David Latu is a different caliber of defensive lineman, I feel like, and BYU will benefit from having him on this roster. I expect at some point this season, he is going to move atop the depth chart for BYU, and I would look forward to seeing what he is capable of contributing to BYU on into the future, obviously, as a member of the BYU football program. All right, so there you go. Special edition, all done right here on the podcast. As I mentioned, tomorrow, I'll look at Sam Houston State a little more in depth from my perspective, where BYU might have an edge against the Bearcats. We'll talk about that. And also, as I mentioned, a one-on-one conversation with BYU freshman LJ Martin, all coming your way on a Friday edition of the podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen. Thank you to all of you once again who are everydayers with us as well. And until tomorrow, have a great rest of your day. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast. See ya.